He got a 2:45 a.m. call from a hospital about his best friend's daughter. She was in trouble and her stepfather wasn't helping. 5 years ago, he promised her dying father he'd protect her. So, he called his motorcycle club, and by dawn 67, bikers were ready to ride 420 miles to keep that promise. Jack Forge Harlan didn't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after the war, not after losing Tyrone, and especially not after the phone rang at 2:45 a.m. on a Tuesday that smelled like engine oil and regret. He was elbowed deep in a 1978 Harley-Davidson when his cell phone vibrated across the workbench, spinning like an angry hornet. The caller ID made his hands freeze mid-wrench. Mercy General Hospital Social Services. Forge's heart dropped into his steel-toed boots. He hadn't heard from anyone in that area code in 3 years. Not since Sterone's funeral. Not since he'd made that promise over a flag-draped coffin, while a 10-year-old black girl with her father's dark brown eyes had squeezed his hands so hard he thought his bones would crack. "This is Forge," answered, his voice rough as gravel. "Mr. Harlan." The woman's voice was young, strained, professional, but cracking at the edges. "My name is Elena Vargas. I'm a social worker at Mercy General Hospital in Nebraska. I'm calling about Maya Jenkins." The name hit him like a fist. What happened? Forge was already moving, wiping grease from his hands onto his jeans. "Is she hurt?" "She's stable now." "But Mr. Harlan, she's been admitted with injuries consistent with." Elena paused and Forge heard papers rustling. Heard her gathering courage, we're calling it a domestic incident. Her stepfather brought her in claiming she fell downstairs, but the patterns don't match. "And Maya, she gave us your name. She said you promised her father you." "I'm coming." Forge was already scanning the garage for his keys. "Don't let anyone take her out of that hospital. You hear me? Nobody. Mr. Harlan, her stepfather, is. I don't care who he is." Forge's voice carried the weight of deserts and battlefields and promise made to dying men. "Tyrone Jenkins saved my life in Kandahar. He took a bullet meant for me. The last thing he asked before he died was for me to watch over his little girl. So, I'm asking you, Miss Vargas, one more time. Can you keep her safe until I get there?" There was a long silence. Then, "How fast can you get here?" Forge looked at the clock, calculated distances, and made a decision that would change everything. "Give me 14 hours, and Miss Vargas, thank you for calling me." Not everyone would have. After he hung up, Forge stood in the silence of his garage, surrounded by skeletons of motorcycles he'd been rebuilding. His reflection stared back from a chromare. 48 years old, face weathered like canyon rock. A scar running from his left eye to his jaw from an IED that should have killed him. But didn't, because Tyrone had thrown himself on top of Forge instead. He pulled out his phone and opened the group chat for the Thunderwolves MC. 66 members spread, across 3 states. Brothers and sisters who'd ridden through dust, storms, and bad divorces, who'd shown up for funerals and weddings. Who understood that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was forged in fire and sealed with loyalty. Forge's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't a casual ride. This was serious. This was the kind of thing that could bring trouble. The kind that followed bikers like shadows. The kind that made people lock their doors and clutch their pearls. But then he remembered Maya Adarone's funeral. How she'd looked so small in that black dress. How she'd whispered, "Uncle Forge, will you still visit me?" And how he'd promised yes, even though her mother's new husband, some cop with cold eyes, had steered her away before Forge could say more. He started typing. "Maya needs us. Tyrone's daughter, hospital in Nebraska, domestic situation. Wheels up at 5 ounces. This isn't optional. This is family." The responses came in like thunder. "I'm in storm. Count me there." Phantom for Tyrone. Crawling out. Inferno, within 10 minutes, all 166 members had responded. Within 20 minutes, Forge's phone was ringing with questions, offers of supplies, Lego contacts. People rearranging their lives because a brother had called and compromise needed keeping. Forge looked at his garage one last time at the half-finished bikes and the photos on the wall. One of him and Tyrone in their army days, young and stupid and invincible. Tyrone was grinning at the camera, arms slung around Forge's shoulder. No idea that 3 years later he'd bleed out in Afghan sand, saving his best friend's life. "I'm coming, brother," Forge whispered to the photo. "I got her." He grabbed a leather jacket, the one with the Thunderwolf's patch on the back, a snarling wolf head with the words, "Loyal to the end," and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. His Harley sat waiting, chrome gleaming under the single garage light like a patient beast. As Forge kicked the engine to life, the roar echoed through the empty Arizona street. Somewhere in Nebraska, a 15-year-old black girl was lying in a hospital bed, probably terrified, probably thinking no one was coming. She was wrong. 67 bikers were about to prove that some promises are kept, no matter the cost. The ride had begun. Dawn broke over the Arizona desert like a wound, all red and gold and angry. By the time the sun cleared the horizon, the parking lot of Forge's garage looked like a scene from a movie. Except this was real, and these stakes were a teenage girl's life. 67 motorcycles lined up in formation. 67 engines rumbling like distant thunder. 67 people who dropped everything because family called. Forge stood at the front, surveying his crew. There was Storm, A6 for mountain of a man who ran a successful construction company and coached Little League on weekends. Crow, a grandmother of 5 who'd ridden across country twice and still wore her late husband's dog tags. Phantom, whose real name was Jamal and who taught high school math when he wasn't wearing his cut. Inferno, a former Marine who'd served 2 tours and now volunteered at Veteran Saunters. These weren't the criminals the news made bikers out to be. These were mechanics and teachers, nurses and contractors, people with mortgages and kids in college. But they all wore their colors with pride, and they all understood that loyalty meant something. "Listen up," Forge's voice cut through the engine noise. The rumbling died to a low purr. "We've got 420 amps ahead of us. That's Nebraska by late afternoon if we push it. We stop once for gas, once for food. We ride tight, we ride smart, and we don't give any cops a reason to pull us over. What's the play when we get there?" Storm asked, arms crossed over his massive chest. "We protect Maya. Whatever that takes," Forge paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But we do it right. No violence, no threats. We're not giving anyone ammunition to paint us as the bad guys. Her stepfather is a cop. He'll be looking for any excuse to have us arrested." Crow spoke up, her voice sharp. "Despotate her 70 years. So we're just going to stand around looking pretty while some badge-wearing bastard tries to take that girl back?" "No," Forge said, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "We're going to stand our ground legally. I've already called Bombs." A murmur rippled through the group. Everyone knew Bonds. Derek Bonds Fletcher. Former Thunderwolf watch-rated his bike for a law degree 15 years ago, but never forgot where he came from. He was the best defense attorney in 3 states and had gotten more than a few club members out of tight spots. Bonds is meeting us at the hospital. He's already pulling strings, filing paperwork. We're doing this by the book. Forge's gaze swept across every face. But make no mistake, that girl is not leaving that hospital with her stepfather. Not while we're breathing. The crowd roared approval, fists pumping there. As they prepared to ride out, Forge caught Phantom checking his phone, frowning. "What is it?" "Just did some digging on the stepfather," Phantom said quietly. "Officer Patrick Donovan. He kept the last name after marrying Maya's mom. Decorated cop, 15 years on the force. Community pillar, coached youth football, volunteers at church. Forge's jaw tightened. Perfect cover. There's more. Phantom's voice dropped lower. Maya's mom died 10 months ago. Car accident. Single vehicle crash on a clear day. The implication hung in the air like poison. Can you prove anything? Forge asked. Not yet, but I've got friends and records. Give me a few hours. Forge nodded grimly. This was worse than he'd thought. They weren't just dealing with an abusive stepfather. They were dealing with someone who knew how to work the system, who understood evidence and procedures, who could make things disappear. Mount up, Forge called out. The engines roared back to life. A symphony of chrome and gasoline and defiance. Forge took point and the convoy fell in behind him. A river of leather and steel flowing out onto the highway. As they hit the open road, Forge felt the familiar meditation of the ride settle over him. Mile markers blurred past. Theedzert stretched endless and golden. Behind him, his family rode in perfect formation, a statement of purpose that made other drivers pull over and stare. Somewhere ahead, Maya was waiting. Somewhere ahead, a confrontation was brewing that would test everything they stood for. Forge twisted the throttle harder, the speedometer climbing. Suand tore at his face, carrying away doubts and fears. He thought of Tyrone, of promises made and blood spilled. He thought of a little black girl who'd grown up without her father and was now trapped with a monster wearing a badge. The highway stretched before them like a challenge, and the Thunder Wolves answered. By the time the sun reached its peak, they were crossing into Nebraska. By the time shadows started lengthening, Mercy General Hospital appeared on the horizon. The real battle was about to begin. Mercy General Hospital had never seen anything like it. The rumble started as a distant vibration, like an earthquake that wouldn't stop. Nurses paused mid-step. Patients near windows pressed their faces to the glass. Security guards reached for their radios, uncertain whether to call for backup or just watch. Then they came around the corner, .67 motorcycles moving like a mechanical army. Chrome flashing in the afternoon sun. Engines creating a sound that rattled windows 3 floors up. Forged them into the parking lot with military precision. He raised his fist and instantly the formation split. Bikes peeling off in organized rows, filling every available space. Within 2 minutes, they were parked. Within 3, the engines cut off in unison, leaving Ben to silence so sudden it felt violent. Then 67 bikers dismounted and stood beside their machines, waiting. The hospital's automatic doors slid open and Forge walked through first, alone. His boots echoed on the polished floor. Every eye in the lobby turned to watch. The massive biker with the scarred face and the cut that read President across his back. Behind the reception desk, a young nurse's hand hovered over the panic button. "I'm here to see Maya Jenkins," Forge said quietly, pulling off his sunglasses. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "My name is Jack Heron. A social worker named Elena Vargas should be expecting me." The nurse swallowed hard, glanced at her computer screen. Then at the security guard who'd materialized at her elbow. "I need to verify. Jack." Everyone turned. Elena Vargas stood by the elevator, clipboard clutched to her chest. She was younger than Forge expected, maybe 30, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and exhaustion written across her face like a second skin. Miss Vargas. Forge crossed the lobby in 3 long strides. "Thank you for calling me." Elena glanced past him at the parking lot, visible through the glass doors. A notion of motorcycles and leather-clad figures standing in silent formation. "You brought quite a few people." "I brought family." Forge kept his voice low, meant only for her. "Where is she?" Elena hesitated, then gestured toward the elevator. "4th floor, room 412. But Mr. Heron, We need to talk first. There are complications. They rode up in tense silence. When the elevator doors opened, Forge saw two uniformed police officers stationed in the hallway, their hands resting casually on their belts. One was talking on his radio, shooting suspicious glances their direction. Alina led Forge to a small consultation room and closed the door. Maya has a fractured wrist, 3 broken ribs, and significant bruising. The injuries are consistent with, she paused, professional mask cracking with sustained abuse. This wasn't one fall. This was months, maybe years of violence. Forge's hands scurled into fists. Where was everyone? Teachers, neighbors. Somebody must have seen something. Officer Donovan is very well respected in the community. He's careful. Maya wore long sleeves, missed school for family emergencies, and he always had explanations ready. Elena's voice hardened. But yesterday, she showed up at school with visible bruising on her neck. A teacher called it in. Donovan brought her here himself, claiming she'd fallen, thinking he could control the narrative. But she told you the truth. She whispered your name to the ER nurse. Said her father told her if anything you ever happened to find Jack Forge Harland, that you'd promised Alina met his eyes. The problem is Donovan is demanding her discharge. He has legal custody, and despite our concerns, without concrete evidence or an ongoing investigation, we can't hold her past today. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Forge's feet today. You're telling me I rode 420 miles and heckin' just walk out of here with her tonight unless we can get an emergency order? Yes. Alina pulled out her phone, showing him a text message. He's already texted me 3 times. He knows you're here. Security called him the moment you arrived. He's on his way now with discharge paperwork and possibly more officers. Forge stood, began pacing the small room like a caged animal. His mind raced through scenarios, each one ending badly. If they tried to physically stop Donovan, they'd all be arrested. If they let Maya leave, she might not survive another week. Can I see her? He asked finally. Alina nodded. Woo minutes. That's all I can allow without family consent. Room 412 was dimmer than the hallway, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The black girl in the bed was almost unrecognizable from the child at Tyrone's funeral. She'd grown taller, her face thinner, but those dark brown eyes. Tyrone's eyes were the same. Uncle Forge. Maya's voice cracked, disbelieving. You actually came. Forge crossed to her bedside, his throat tight. I promised your dad, didn't I? Then this 15-year-old black girl who'd been trying to be strong for so long finally broke, tears streaming down her face. He killed my mom. I know he did, and nobody believes me. The words hit Forge like bullets. Everything had just changed. Forge barely had time to process Maya's words before Elenina appeared in the doorway, her face pale. He's here, she whispered urgently. Donovan just walked into the lobby with 2 other officers and a lawyer. Forge squeezed Maya's hand once, a promise without words, and stepped into the hallway. Through the window, overlooking the parking lot, he could see his crew still standing by their bikes, patient as statues. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Storm inside. Stay ready. The response was immediate. Copy, when Forge reached the lobby. He understood why Alina looked terrified. Officer Patrick Donovan stood in the center of the room like he owned it. 6 feet tall, perfectly pressed uniform, square jaw, and the kind of smile that belonged on campaign posters. Beside him, 2 uniformed officers flanked a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Hospital security hovered uncertainly, caught between authority figures. Donovan smiled at it, reached his eyes when he spotted Forge. Jack Harlan, Donovan said, his voice carrying across the lobby. I've heard about you. Tyrone's old war buddy, right? Appreciate you checking on Maya, but I've got it from here. Family business. Forge walked forward slowly, aware that every word, every gesture would matter. Maya asked for me. That makes it my business. Maya, 15, and confused. She had an accident, got scared, and called out for a familiar name. It happens Donovan's tone was reasonable, sympathetic, even the voice of a concerned parent. But I'm her legal guardian, and she's coming home with me tonight. With a fractured wrist and 3 broken ribs, Forge kept his voice level. That's one hell of an accident. The lawyer stepped forward, smoothing his tie. Mr. Harlan, I'm Richard Kessler, Officer Donovan's attorney. Unless you have a legal standing in this matter, you need to step aside. My client has full custody rights and medical release forms signed by attending physicians. Funny thing about those forms, Forge said they usually require the patient's consent if they're over 14. Did anyone ask Maya what she wants? Donovan's smile tightened. My daughter is traumatized and not thinking clearly. That's why parents make decisions for their children. She's not your daughter. The words came out harder than Forge intended. She's Tyrone Jenkins's daughter. You just married her mother. Something flickered in Donovan's eyes. Something cold and dangerous, quickly masked by wounded offense. My wife died 10 months ago. I've been raising Maya alone since then, doing my best in an impossible situation. And now you show up with a gang. A motorcycle club. Forge corrected. A gang. Donovan continued, his voice rising slightly, trying to intimidate a Spittle staff and interfere with a lawful guardian's rights. I could have every single one of you arrested for harassment. The 2 officers behind Donovan shifted, hands moving closer to their weapons. The message was clear. Forge felt the situation teetering on Acne's edge. One wrong word, one aggressive move, and this would explode into something that would destroy any chance of helping Maya. Then he noticed something. Asterisk, asterisk. Donovan kept glancing at his watch, checking the time, anxious despite his confident facade. He was in a hurry. What? Tell you what, Forge said slowly. An idea forming. Why don't we let Maya decide? She's 15, almost an adult. Let's go up there together. No lawyers, no uniforms, and ask her where she wants to go. Donovan's jaw tightened. I don't need permission to take my own daughter home. Then you've got nothing to lose by asking her. Forge held his ground. Unless you're afraid of what she might say. The lobby had gone silent. Hospital staff pretended to work while listening to every word. Even the lawyer looked uncomfortable. Donovan took a step closer to Forge, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in every courthouse in this state. I've put away bikers like you for less than parking violations. You want to make this a fight. I'll bury you and every single one of your criminal friends. We're not the ones who hurt her, Forge said quietly, meeting Donovan's eyes. But I think you know that already. For a brief second, Donovan's mask slipped. Forge saw pure rage flicker across his face, the real man beneath the uniform. Then the automatic door slid open and a voice called out, Did somebody order a lawyer? Everyone turned. A man in an immaculate 3-piece suit strode through the entrance. Briefcase in hand, silver hair perfectly styled behind him, visible through the glass doors. 66 bikers had moved from the parking lot to form a silent wall outside the hospital entrance. Derek Bonds Fletcher had arrived, and the legal battle was about to begin. Donovan's confident smile finally cracked. Bonds didn't walk. He commanded space. Every eye in the lobby tracked him as he crossed to Forge, set down his briefcase with a decisive click, and extended his hand. Jack, been too long. Then he turned to Donovan with a smile that could cut glass. Officer Donovan, I presume? Derek Fletcher, attorney at law. I'll bear presenting Mr. Harland and Miss Maya Jenkins in this matter. Denovanslor Kessler stepped forward. This is highly irregular. The girl has legal representation through her guardian. Does she? Bonds pulled out a document from his briefcase. Because I have here a petition for emergency guardianship filed 1 hour ago on behalf of Miss Jenkins, citing credible allegations of abuse and requesting immediate investigation. Judge Patricia Pereira has agreed to an emergency hearing via video conference. He checked his watch. Tomorrow morning, 9:02 a.m., the lobby erupted in murmurs. Donovan's face flushed red. You can't. I can't, and I did. Bond's voice carried the weight of courtrooms won and lost until that hearing. Maya Jenkins remains in protective custody at this hospital. Any attempt to remove her will be considered as violation of a pending court order. Kessler snatched the document, scanning it rapidly. His expression darkened. This is a delay tactic. This is due process, Bonds corrected. Something your client should appreciate being a law enforcement officer. That's when Forge noticed them. News vans pulling into the parking lot. 3, then 4, then 5 cameramen spilling out. Reporters checking their makeup in mirrors. Donovan saw them, too. His jaw clenched. You called the press. I didn't have to. Bonds gestured towards the windows where reporters were already filming the wall of bikers, standing silent vigil outside. 67 motorcycles descending on a hospital. That's news. The question is, what story do you want told? As if on cue, a reporter and cameraman pushed through the entrance. Microphone Yoletti extended. Officer Donovan, can you comment on allegations? Donovan held up his hand, instantly shifting into public relations. Mode, this is a private family matter being exploited by outside parties with no legal standing. My daughter is receiving excellent care, and I'm working with hospital administration to bring her home safely. Is it true she has injuries consistent with abuse? Another reporter called out, shoving through the growing crowd. My daughter had an accident. These allegations are unfounded and hurtful. Donovan's voice carried righteous indignation. What you should be reporting on is how amateur cycle gang has shown up to harass a grieving family. With respect, officer, a reporterant turfed. Sources say the girl specifically asked for Jack Heron. Why would she do that if she felt safe at home? Donovan's composure cracked for just a second. Forge saw it. The flash of panic quickly masked. Bonds leaned close to Forge. We need to get ahead of this narrative. You should make a statement. I'm not good with cameras. Forge muttered. You don't need to be good. You need to be honest. Bonds straightened for Guskaller. Tell them why you're here. Make it personal. Make it real. Forge looked through the glass at his crew, standing like sentinels. At Crow, who'd ridden through the night despite her arthritis. At Storm, who'd left his construction site mid-project. At Phantom, who'd probably have to use sick days and deal with angry administrators. They'd all come because he'd asked, because a promise meant something. He walked outside. The cameras pivoted toward him like hunting dogs catching a scent. Microphones thrust forward. Questions overlapped into noise. Forge held up one hand, and surprisingly, they quieted. My name is Jack Heron, he began, his voice rough but steady. 5 years ago, I served in Afghanistan with Tyrone Jenkins. He saved my life, took a bullet meant for me. Before he died, he skewed me to watch over his daughter if anything ever happened. Forge paused, emotion tightening his throat. 3 years ago, I made that promise at his funeral. Last night, that little girl, who's not so little anymore, called for help. Are you accusing Officer Donovan of abuse? A reporter shouted. I'm saying a child asked for help, and I came. That's all. Forge's gaze swept across the cameras. We're not here to fight. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here because family matters. Because promises matter. Because sometimes a child's voice gets lost in the noise and somebody needs to make sure it's heard. Behind him, the bikers stood motionless, a unified statement of purpose. The reporters ate it up, already typing headlines on their phones. Inside the lobby, Donovan watched through the glass. His expression unreadable, but Forge caught him pulling out his phone, making a call. His body language screamed urgency. Whatever Donovan was planning, it was happening now. Bonds appeared at Forge's elbow. That was perfect. Social media is already exploding. Utter promise kept us trending. Good, Forge said, because I have a feeling Donovan's about to make his move. He was right. By nightfall, Mercy General Hospital had transformed into a fortress of wills. The Thunderwolves set up camp in the parking lot, folding chairs, coolers, sleeping bags. They weren't leaving. Crow organized food runs. Storm coordinated watch rotations. Phantom disappeared into a quiet corner with his laptop, digging deeper into Donovan's background. Inside, Bonds commandeered a corner of the hospital cafeteria, spreading documents across 3 tables like a general planning war. Forge sat across from him, nursing terrible coffee while Bonds explained the battlefield. Donovan's playing this smart, Bonds said, highlighting sections of legal text. He's filed a counterpetition, claiming you're an unfit guardian with no legal standing. He's citing your criminal record. I don't have a criminal record, Forge interrupted. You do now. Apparently, you were arrested for disorderly conduct in 2019. Charges dropped, but it's on record. Bonds' eyes narrowed. Ring any bell. Forge's jaw tightened. Bar fight. Some drunk college kid grabbed Crow inappropriately. I stepped in. We settled it outside of court. Convenient that Donovan dug that up in 3 hours. Bonds made a note. He's also claiming the motorcycle club has known gang affiliations. He's painting you as dangerous criminals attempting to kidnap a minor. That's that strategy. Bonds cut him off. Donovan's been a cop for 15 years. He knows how to build a case, how to control narratives. Right now, he's creating reasonable doubt about your intentions while positioning himself as the protective father defending his daughter from criminals. Forge felt his frustration rising. So what do? We prove he's lying. Bonds pulled out another document. This is where it gets interesting. He pulled Donovan's financials public record for law enforcement. In the past 10 months since Maya's mother died, Donovan has liquidated 3 investment accounts, taken out a second mortgage, and transferred nearly $180,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The number hit Forge like cold water. Why would he need that kind of money? That's the question. Bonds tapped the paper. Either he's planning to ruin or he's paying someone off. Either way, it suggests he's worried about something coming to light. Forge remembered Maya's broken voice. He killed my mom. I know he did. The car accident, Forge said slowly. Can we get those records? Already requested. Should have them by morning. Bonds leaned back. But here's the problem. Even if we prove financial irregularities, even if we raise questions about the mother's death, none of that immediately proves Maya is in danger. Donovan can claim the money transfers are personal investments, that his stepdaughter is traumatized and making false accusations because she's grieving. So, we're back to square one. Not quite. Bond's phone buzzed. He read the message and smiled grimly. Phantom just sent me something interesting. Apparently, Donovan coached youth football for 3 years, quit suddenly last season. No explanation, so I made some calls, found 2 parents willing to talk off the record. Their kids reported aggressive coaching that left bruises. Nothing was formally filed because Donovan convinced them it was normal contact sports injuries. But parents remembered. Parents always remember when something feels wrong. Forge's hands clenched into fists. He's been hurting kids for years. Allegedly, Bonds corrected the lawyer in him precise. But it establishes a pattern. Combined with Maya's injuries, the financial irregularities, and questions about the mother's death were building a picture. A knock on the cafeteria doorframe made them both look up. Elena Vargas stood there, looking exhausted and frightened. "I need to show you something," she said quietly. "But if anyone asks, you didn't get it from me." She handed Forge a manila folder. Inside were medical records. Not Maya's, but her mother's from the 3 years before her death. 2 broken fingers, a concussion, bruised ribs. All explained as accidents. All treated by different hospitals in different towns. "She was running from him," Elena whispered, "trying to get help without leaving a paper trail in one place. But I cross-referenced her medical history. It's all there." Forge stared at the documents, rage building in his chest. Why didn't anyone see it? Because he's careful. Because he's respected. Because a system isn't designed to catch people who know how to work it. Elena's voice cracked. "I'm risking my career showing you this, but that girl upstairs doesn't have anyone else." Bonds was all ready for drafting every page. "This changes everything. If we can prove systematic abuse of the mother, we can argue Maya is in immediate danger. There's something else," Elena added. "Donovan requested Mia's medical records unsealed. Said it was for her privacy, but he's trying to control what the court sees. Can he do that?" Forge asked. He already did. 2 hours ago, Elena checked over Hershalder nervously. "But I made copies before the order went through." Bond stood gathering documents with renewed purpose. "Get some rest, Jack. Tomorrow's hearing is going to be brutal. Donovan will come with everything he has. Character witnesses, colleagues, probably half the police force." "Let him," Forge said, his voice hard as iron. "We've got the truth." "Truth doesn't always win in court," Bonds warned. "But it's a damn good start." Outside, the first stars appeared over the parking lot where 66 bikers kept watch. Inside, a 15-year-old black girl slept fitfully, guarded by nurses who'd quietly started believing her story. And somewhere in the night, Officer Patrick Donovan made phone calls to people would him favors. The morning would bring revelation. The hospital conference room felt smaller than it was. Too many people, too much at stake. A laptop set a pin on the table, its camera pointed at the assembled crowd like a judgment eye. On screen, Judge Patricia Herrera arranged her papers, her expression unreadable behind silver-rimmed glasses. Forge sat beside Bonds, feeling out of place in a borrowed dress shirt. Across table, Donovan sat perfectly composed in his dress uniform, medals gleaming. His lawyer, Kessler, had a stack of character references an inch thick. Behind them, crammed into every available space, stood reporters, hospital staff, and 3 uniformed officers Donovan had brought as moral support. Outside the door, Storm and Crow kept watch while the rest of the crew maintained their vigil in the parking lot. "Let's begin," Judge Herrera said crisply. "This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary guardianship of Maya Jenkins, age 15. Mr. Kessler, you represent Officer Patrick Donovan." "Yes, Your Honor. And I'd like to state for the record that this entire proceeding is irregular and unnecessary. Officer Donovan is a decorated law enforcement officer with 15 years of exemplary service. Save the character witnesses for later." The judge interrupted. "Mr. Fletcher, you're petitioning for emergency guardians on behalf of Mr. Harlan." "Yes, Your Honor. Based on credible evidence of ongoing abuse and immediate danger to the minor child." Donovan's jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. The picture of a wronged man bearing false accusations with dignity. Let's see this evidence. Judge Herrera said what followed was 90 minutes of legal warfare. Bonds presented medical records, Maya's broken bones, her mother's mysterious injuries, theppertorn spanning years. Kessler countered with accident reports Donovan's, spotless record testimonials from fellow officers calling him a devoted father. Donovan testified with practiced emotion. "Your Honor, my stepdaughter is grieving. She lost her mother 10 months ago, and she's angry at the world. I've tried to help her get her counseling, but she's pushing me away. And now this man," he gestured at Forge. "Someone she barely knows shows up with a gang and tells her what she wants to hear. That someone else is to blame for her pain. Mr. Harland has known Maya since she was born." Bonds countered. He was her father's best friend and made a deathbed promise to protect her. A promise made 5 years ago to a dead man. Kessler shot back. "That doesn't grant legal standing or prove Officer Donovan is unfit." Forge watched Donovan studying him. The man was good, too good. Every answer perfectly calibrated, every emotion precisely measured. He'd rehearsed this. Then Judge Herrera asked the question that changed everything. "I'd like to hear from Maya herself. Is she able to participate via video?" Donovan's face went carefully blank. "Your Honor, my daughter is heavily medicated and traumatized. She's awake and coherent. Alina Vargas spoke up from the back of the room and she's requested to speak." Kessler stood. "Your Honor, subjecting a traumatized teenager, too. It's her life we're deciding," Judge Herrera said firmly. "Bring her in." 2 nurses wheeled Maya into the room. She looked smaller than Forge remembered, pale against the white hospital gown, her casted wrist cradled against her chest. But when Harras found Donovan, they burned with something Forge recognized from his military days. The look of someone who decided they had nothing left to lose. "Hello, Maya," Judge Herrera said gently. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." "I'm ready." Maya's voice was soft but steady. She turned to look directly at Donovan through the screen. "I need to tell the truth before he makes it disappear like everything else." Donovan leaned forward, his voice concerned. "Sweetheart, you're confused." "He killed my mom," Maya said, and the room went silent. "I don't have proof, but I know she was planning to leave him. I heard them fighting the week before she died. She told him she'd found something, some medicaments, and she was going to the police." "Maya, honey, your mother's death was investigated," Donovan began. "By your friends." Maya's voice cracked. "By cops who believed every word you said. But I know what I saw. The night before she died, you were in the garage for hours, and the next day, her course brakes failed on a straight road. She drove every day." Kessler was already objecting, talking about grief and Destelius. But Forge saw it, Donovan's mask finally slipping. Just for a second, his expression went cold and flat, and Forge saw the real man in Darnath. "There's more," Maya continued, pulling something from her pocket. "A USB drive. Mom hid this in my room 3 days before she died. She made me promise not to look at it unless something happened to her. It's bank records. Proof he was stealing from the police evidence locker and selling it. That's where all his money came from." The room exploded. Donovan lunged forward, but the officers behind him grabbed his arms. "That's fabricated. She's lying." But his panic gave him away. Judge Herrera's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Officer Donovan, your order to remain seated, Mr. Fletcher. I'm granting emergency custody to Mr. Harland, pending a full criminal investigation." Donovan's face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed, staring at Forge. But it was. The sunset painteth Nebraska's sky in shades of amber and crimson. As Maya walked out of Mercy General Hospital for the last time, she moved slowly, still healing. One arm Ina cast and supported by a nurse on each side. Behind her came Forge Karinger's single backpack. Everything she'd asked for from the house she'd never turned to. Bonds followed, still on his phone, coordinating with Prosecutor Schwo were very interested in that USB drive. But it was what waited outside that made Mia stop in her tracks. 6-7 motorcycles lined the hospital driveway in perfect formation, creating a corridor of chrome and leather. 6-7 bikers stood beside their machines, not a single engine running, just silent respect for a girl who'd found her voice. Crow stepped forward first, her weathered face soft with understanding. She held out a leather jacket, smaller, fitted for a teenager, with a patch on the back that read Thunderwolf's family above an embroidered wolf protecting a pup. Every wolf needs a pack, Crow said gently, helping Mayo slip it on over her cast. Welcome home, kid. Its eyes filled with tears. I didn't understand. You don't even know me. We know enough. Storm rumbled, his massive frame some Haugental as he adjusted her collar. You're Tyrone Jenkins's daughter. That makes you family, and we protect family. Forge watched from a few steps back, his throat tight. This was why he rode. Not for the freedom or the rebellion or the image, but for this. For moments when loyalty meant something real. When promises were kept. When a scared kid learned she wasn't alone. Ready to ride. He asked Maya, offering his hand. She looked at his scarred face, at the bikers surrounding them, Ath media cameras capturing every moment. Then she looked back at the hospital, where somewhere inside Donovan was binge-printed and fingerprinted and read his rights. Where his perfect mask had finally shattered. Where are we going? She asked. Arizona, for now. My place has a guest room. It's yours as long as you need it. Bonds is working on making the guardianship permanent, but that'll take time. We'll figure it out together. Forge paused. Your dad would have wanted you safe. That's all that matters. Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. Uncle Forge, thank you for keeping your promise. For believing me when nobody else would. Always, he said simply. She climbed carefully onto the back of his Harley. Settling behind him, Forge felt her arms wrap around his waist, tentative at first, then tighter. Like someone holding on to something solid after years of drowning. All right, Thunderwolves. Forge's voice carried across the parking lot. Let's ride. 67 engines roared to life in perfect synchronization. A symphony of power and purpose that rattled windows and set off car alarms. But this time, it wasn't intimidation, it was celebration. They pulled out slowly. Forge leading with Maya behind him. The formation reformed around them, a protective escort that stretched half a mile down the highway. Storm and Crow flanked them. Phantom road sweep, making sure nobody fell behind. The rest filled in between. A wall of loyalty on wheels. Cars pulled over to watch them pass. People held up phones filming. A few even waved. As they hit the open highway, Maya leaned closer to Forge's back. He felt her relax slightly. The tension of months, maybe years, starting to ease. The wind tore at their clothes. The sun sank lower, turning the desert gold. And for the first time since that phone call at 2:45 a.m., Forge allowed himself to breathe. They'd won. Not perfectly. Donovan would face trial. Buth had money and connections and might find ways to reduce his sentence. The investigation into Maya's mother's death could take years. There would be therapy sessions and legal battles and difficult days ahead. But right now, in this moment, they'd kept a promise. They'd given one girl her voice back. They'd proved that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was forged in loyalty and sealed with action. By the time they crossed the state line into Arizona, stars were beginning to appear. The convoy rode on through the gathering darkness, headlights cutting through the night like a river of light. Somewhere ahead, Forge's garage waited, a guest room that would become Maya's sanctuary. A new life built on the foundation of an old promise. In his rearview mirror, Forge caught Maya's reflection. She was looking up at the stars, and for the first time in what might have been years, she was smiling. Behind them, the hospital disappeared into the distance. Behind them, Donovan's empire crumbled. Behind them, a nightmare ended. Ahead, the highway stretched endless and full of impossibility. The Thunderwolves rode into the darkness, 67 strong, carrying Ghani Girl toward something she'd almost forgotten existed.